The signal. General Zyrax stood motionless on the command deck of the Fury of Varnak, his obsidian eyes locked on the shimmering blue-green orb displayed on the central holoscreen. Earth, a planet teeming with life, hung in the void like a fragile bauble. To the seasoned warrior, it was just another conquest, a stepping stone in his unrelenting campaign across the galaxy. Yet, as his crew began intercepting the planet's communication signals, a disquieting hum filled the air. "Lieutenant Yvok, report," Zyrax commanded, his voice cold and measured. Yvok, a wiry figure with silver-gray skin, adjusted the controls before him, his sharp features betraying no emotion. "General, we've successfully tapped into the planet's communication networks. However, the data is unusual." "Unusual?" Zyrax's brow furrowed, a rare sign of concern. "Yes, sir. The signals are chaotic, thousands of simultaneous transmissions, most of them nonsensical. It's as if the inhabitants are constantly arguing, laughing, sharing trivialities. It's unlike anything we've encountered." Zyrax's gaze narrowed. "Begin analysis. We must understand their weaknesses." As the ship's AI processed the incoming data, the crew began to feel an unsettling pressure in their minds, a growing sense of unease that gnawed at the edges of their sanity. The air grew thick with tension, a stark contrast to the cold, sterile environment of the ship. One of the technicians, a young soldier named Krav, suddenly winced, clutching his head. "General, the noise, it's—" He stopped short, as if unable to articulate the discomfort spreading through his mind. Zyrax's eyes flicked to Krav, his expression hardening. "Focus, soldier. We are on the brink of a significant victory. Do not falter now." Krav nodded shakily, but the discomfort lingered, a faint, insistent buzz that wouldn't be silenced. Zyrax dismissed it as mere nerves, a symptom of inexperience in the face of what should have been a routine operation. Minutes stretched into hours as the alien ship drifted in Earth's orbit, its systems absorbing the torrent of human communication. The crew's unease grew more pronounced. Even Lieutenant Yvok, usually unflappable, found himself unsettled by the relentless stream of information. "General," Yvok began cautiously, "perhaps we should reconsider our approach. The data is overwhelming our systems. The crew is affected." Zyrax turned sharply, his voice icy. "Are you suggesting we retreat?" Yvok hesitated, his gaze meeting Zyrax's. "No, sir. But I recommend we proceed with caution. This planet's inhabitants may possess an unconventional form of resistance." Zyrax stared at Yvok for a long moment, weighing his words. "We will not be deterred by noise, Lieutenant. Increase the data intake. I want to know everything about this species, their culture, their strategies, their weaknesses." The lieutenant inclined his head, returning to his station. Yet, a seed of doubt had been planted, a flicker of uncertainty that refused to be extinguished. As the ship's systems strained under the continuous influx of Earth's transmissions, a strange atmosphere settled over the crew. The alien language of the intercepted signals blended into a cacophony of voices, human laughter, music, angry debates, all interwoven with bizarre cultural references that made little sense to the disciplined minds of the Varnak. Zyrax stood rigid, refusing to acknowledge the growing unease that rippled through his crew. His focus was absolute, his determination unwavering. Earth was to be conquered, its resources harvested, its people subjugated. Yet, in the back of his mind, a small, nagging thought began to take root. What if they had underestimated this strange, chaotic world? The Fury of Varnak drifted silently through the void, its crew teetering on the brink, as the chaotic pulse of Earth's collective voice pressed ever harder against their disciplined minds. Lieutenant Yvok's fingers trembled slightly as he reviewed the latest data streams. The ship's sensors strained to keep up with the incessant bombardment of Earth's communications. In his years of service, Yvok had faced countless enemies, brutal, cunning, relentless. But this was something else entirely. "General Zyrax," Yvok began, his voice carefully measured. "The crew's psychological state is deteriorating. The signals, they're not just noise. They're affecting us on a deeper level." General Zyrax stood tall, his imposing figure backlit by the soft glow of the control panels. "Your concerns are noted, Lieutenant," he replied coolly. "But we will not retreat. We must understand what makes this species so resilient." Yvonne hesitated, choosing his next words with care. "General, the crew is experiencing symptoms of mental strain, headaches, hallucinations. If we continue, we risk losing control of the situation." Zyrax's eyes narrowed, his expression hardening. "We are warriors, not weaklings. The strength of the mind is paramount. We will endure." But even as Zyrax spoke, a sharp, discordant laugh echoed through the ship, reverberating off the cold, metallic walls. It was human laughter, shrill, mocking, almost alien in its unfamiliarity. The sound twisted through the corridors, sending shivers down the spines of the crew. Yvonne's gaze flicked to the source of the noise, his composure faltering. "General, this isn't just data. It's psychological warfare. They're using their culture as a weapon." Zyrax's jaw tightened. "Culture? This chaotic cacophony is nothing more than the ravings of a primitive species. We will break through it." Suddenly, the lights flickered, casting long shadows across the deck. The ship's AI stuttered, struggling to process the overwhelming influx of information. The once precise operations of the Fury of Varnak now faltered, marred by unexpected glitches and errors. In the corner, Krav, the young technician, clutched his head, muttering to himself in a low, frantic tone. His eyes darted wildly, as if searching for something unseen. "It's in my mind, can't shut it out, the noise." Yvonne moved swiftly, placing a hand on Krav's shoulder, trying to steady him. "Krav, focus. We need you to stay with us." But Krav's breathing quickened, his words tumbling out in a panicked rush. "It's too much, too many voices, they're everywhere, they won't stop." Zyrax watched the scene unfold with a grim expression, his mind racing. He had underestimated the power of Earth's signals. They weren't merely intercepting data, they were being bombarded by the raw essence of humanity's chaotic spirit, a force that defied logic and reason. "General, we must act," Yvonne urged, his tone growing more insistent. "We need to isolate the most harmful frequencies and filter them out before we lose more crew." For a moment, Zyrax remained silent, his eyes fixed on the holoscreen displaying Earth's relentless transmissions. Then, with a sharp nod, he relented. "Initiate a partial shutdown of non-essential systems. Divert all available resources to filter the incoming data. But do not, under any circumstances, cease the interception." Yvonne swiftly relayed the orders, his hands moving deftly over the controls. The ship's lights dimmed as power was rerouted, and the relentless stream of human signals began to slow, though it remained a constant presence, humming ominously in the background. As the tension eased slightly, Yvonne turned to Zyrax. "This planet is more dangerous than we anticipated. We need to approach it differently." Zyrax's gaze remained fixed on the holoscreen, his expression unreadable. "You may be right, Lieutenant," he admitted quietly. "But we cannot afford to show weakness. We will adapt, we will learn, and we will conquer. This mission is far from over." Yvonne nodded, though his unease lingered. The ship was stabilizing, but the effects of Earth's chaotic signals were far from over. The crew had been pushed to their limits, and the challenge was only beginning. As the ship drifted silently in orbit, the crew steeled themselves for what was to come. Earth, with its maddening waves of noise and emotion, had shown them a new kind of warfare, one that tested not just their strength but their very sanity. And as the echoes of human laughter faded into the background, a question lingered in the air. Could the Fury of Varnak withstand the storm, or would it be torn apart by the very essence of the planet it sought to conquer? The Fury of Varnak hung in Earth's orbit like a wounded predator, its once pristine systems now burdened by the relentless assault of human communication. The crew's initial confidence had eroded, replaced by a pervasive sense of dread. The constant bombardment of Earth's signals, laughter, music, debates, and countless other fragments of human experience, had begun to wear them down, gnawing at their sanity like a slow, insidious poison. Lieutenant Yvonne stood by the main control console, his posture tense. The dim lighting cast long shadows across his face, highlighting the lines of strain that had deepened over the past days. He reviewed the latest reports with growing concern. The filters they had implemented had reduced the most harmful frequencies, but the crew was still struggling. Their minds were under siege, assaulted by the unpredictable nature of the human psyche. "General Zyrax," Ivok said, turning to face the commander, "the crew's condition is worsening. We've had 2 more cases of psychological breakdowns. Krav and several others are in stasis, but if this continues..." Zyrax's expression remained unreadable, his gaze fixed on the holoscreen where Earth's signal pulsed with undiminished intensity. "We cannot abandon the mission, Lieutenant. We've come too far to be deterred by a mere psychological challenge." Ivok hesitated. "This isn't just a challenge, General. This is a full-scale mental assault. Earth's inhabitants are using their very essence against us, and it's working." A sharp crackle interrupted their conversation, the sound of static mingling with distorted human voices. The ship's AI, usually a precise and emotionless presence, stuttered as it attempted to process the incoming data. "Unable to comply, system overload." Zyrax's hand clenched into a fist, his frustration finally breaking through his stoic facade. "Recalibrate the AI. Focus on the mission parameters. We will not be defeated by noise." But the AI's response was fragmented, erratic. Data, corrupted, human influence, overwhelming. Ivok's eyes widened as he realized the implications. "General, it's not just the crew. The ship itself is being affected. The AI is struggling to maintain control. We need to disconnect from the data streams before." Before Ivok could finish, the lights flickered violently, and the ship shuddered as if gripped by an unseen force. Panels sparked, and alarms blared throughout the deck, a cacophony of warning sounds that mirrored the chaos within the crew's minds. The ship's temperature fluctuated wildly, hot one moment, cold the next, as the systems began to spiral out of control. "Shut it down!" Zyrax barked, his voice cutting through the noise. "Disconnect from the data stream now!" Ivok scrambled to comply, his fingers flying over the controls. But even as he worked, the ship seemed to resist, as if Earth's chaotic influence had burrowed deep into its core. The holoscreen flashed erratically, showing images of Earth's surface, smiling faces, towering cities, vast landscapes, all interspersed with scenes of war, poverty, and conflict. The contrast was jarring, a vivid display of the extremes of human existence. The crew members who were still conscious began to murmur, their voices tinged with fear and confusion. Some spoke of visions, hallucinations that brought them face to face with their deepest fears and desires, all projected into their minds by the unfiltered human data. It's inside my head," one crew member whispered, eyes wide with terror. "I can see them, feel them, they're everywhere." Ivok felt a cold sweat break out across his skin. The situation was spiraling out of control, faster than he could have anticipated. "General, we have to retreat. If we don't disconnect now, we might lose the entire ship." For a moment Zyrax seemed to waver, his pride warring with the reality of their situation. Then, with a deep, reluctant sigh, he nodded. "Do it. Disconnect from the data stream and prepare for emergency stasis. We'll regroup once the crew is stabilized." Ivok didn't waste a second. He initiated the emergency protocols, his hands moving with practiced precision. The ship's AI, though faltering, responded to the override, and the data streams from Earth were cut off. The oppressive weight that had been pressing down on the crew began to lift, but the damage had already been done. As the ship's systems powered down to minimum levels, a heavy silence fell over the command deck. The crew members who were still conscious slumped in their seats, exhaustion etched into their features. The once proud vessel, a symbol of Varnak's military might, now floated in orbit, crippled not by a superior force, but by the very culture of the world it sought to conquer. Zyrax turned to Ivok, his voice low and filled with a rare vulnerability. "This isn't over, Lieutenant. We will find a way to conquer this planet, but first we must survive." Ivok nodded, though he shared none of Zyrax's confidence. The events of the past few days had shaken him to his core. They had come to Earth expecting a straightforward conquest, but what they had encountered was far beyond anything they could have prepared for. As the ship drifted silently through the void, Yvonne couldn't shake the feeling that they had underestimated not just the humans, but the very nature of what it meant to be human. And as the last echoes of Earth's chaotic transmissions faded into the background, a new fear took root in Yvonne's mind. What if they had awakened something they couldn't control? The fury of Varnak drifted in the vast emptiness of space, a shadow of its former glory. Inside, the crew wrestled with the aftermath of their encounter with Earth's chaotic transmissions. The ship's corridors, once bustling with activity, were now eerily silent, save for the occasional hum of malfunctioning systems. The oppressive quiet weighed heavily on everyone, a constant reminder of their precarious situation. General Zyrax stood in the central command chamber, staring at the main holoscreen, which now displayed only static. His eyes, usually sharp and commanding, were tired, darkened by sleepless nights filled with echoes of human voices. He had underestimated Earth, and now they were paying the price. But surrender was not an option. Varnak's pride would not allow it. "Report," Zyrax commanded, his voice hoarse but firm. Lieutenant Yvonne, one of the few officers still standing, approached with a grim expression. "The crew is in stasis, General. Those who aren't already incapacitated by the transmissions are showing signs of extreme fatigue and mental exhaustion. We've managed to stabilize the AI, but the damage to our systems is extensive. We're barely holding together." Zyrax clenched his jaw, frustration boiling just beneath the surface. "And our communication with Varnak?" Yvonne hesitated. "Still disrupted. We've been cut off from any external contact. The interference from Earth's transmissions, it's more pervasive than we anticipated." Zyrax turned away, his gaze unfocused. They had come to Earth as conquerors, only to be brought to their knees by an enemy they could neither see nor understand. The data stream that had once promised strategic advantage had instead become their undoing. But beneath his frustration, a spark of determination still burned. He was not ready to give up, not yet. "What about our contingency plan?" Zyrax asked, his tone more measured now. Yvonne's expression grew somber. "We have one option left, General. A full systems reboot. It would wipe our databases clean, eliminating any trace of the human influence. But it would also mean losing all of our gathered intelligence, including our knowledge of Earth." Zyrax considered this for a moment, weighing the risks. A complete reset would restore the ship's functionality, but at the cost of everything they had fought for. Yet, there was no other choice. "Do it. Prepare the reboot sequence." Yvonne nodded, though his movements were slow, deliberate. The weight of their situation pressed down on him, but he steeled himself. "Understood, General. It will take some time to initiate, but once it's done, we'll be starting from scratch." As Yvonne moved to execute the command, the ship shuddered, a deep vibration resonating through the hull. The holoscreen flickered, and for a brief moment, an image flashed across it, a human face, smiling. It was a simple image, but it sent a chill down Zyrax's spine. The face disappeared as quickly as it had appeared, leaving behind only static once more. "Did you see that?" Zyrax asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Yvonne glanced at the screen, his expression tense. "I saw it. Just a trick of the system, perhaps. But it felt deliberate." Zyrax's mind raced. He couldn't shake the feeling that the humans were somehow aware of their presence, that they were being watched, studied, even toyed with. It was a thought that unsettled him more than he cared to admit. "Proceed with the reboot," Zyrax ordered, his voice regaining its authority. "We must regain control of this situation." Yvonne initiated the sequence, and the ship's lights dimmed further as systems began to power down. The crew members in stasis remained unaware, their minds shielded from the ongoing turmoil. For a brief moment, everything seemed to hold its breath, the quiet anticipation of something irreversible. Then, just as the final sequence began, the ship's sensors picked up an incoming signal, strong, clear, and unmistakably human. The AI, still functional enough to interpret, broadcasted the message across the command deck. This is Earth's defense network. To the unidentified vessel in our orbit, we know you're there. Your attempts to interfere with our communications have been detected. You are advised to retreat immediately, or face the consequences. The message was calm, devoid of any overt threat, yet it carried a weight that made Zyrax's blood run cold. They had underestimated the humans from the start, and now, they were being directly challenged. The finality in the message left no room for negotiation. Zyrax's hands tightened into fists. "Abort the reboot," he commanded sharply. "Prepare for immediate departure." Yvonne's eyes widened in surprise. "But General, if we don't..." "Do it!" Zyrax snapped. "We cannot afford to engage. We must return to Varnak with what little we have left." Yvonne hesitated only a moment before complying. The reboot sequence was halted, and the ship's engines began to power up, the vibrations growing stronger as they prepared to leave Earth's orbit. As the fury of Varnak slowly turned away from the blue planet, Zyrax couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than a tactical retreat. They had come seeking to conquer, but instead, they had been taught a harsh lesson in humility. The humans were not the simple, primitive creatures they had imagined. They were something far more dangerous, far more resilient. As Earth faded into the distance, Zyrax knew one thing for certain: this was not the end. The Varnak would regroup, learn from their mistakes, and return. But next time, they would be prepared for the true nature of their enemy. Next time, they would not underestimate the power of humanity. And as the ship accelerated into the depths of space, the final remnants of Earth's signal echoed faintly in the silence, a reminder of the world they had dared to challenge, and the price of their hubris.